So how gay does Dumbledore need to be? It's a legitimate question, one that I don't envy Warner Brothers for having to consider. But it seems that at least for now they have their answer, as director David Yates has said in a recent interview that at least in the Crimes of Grindelwald film, Dumbledore's sexuality won't be dealt with quote-unquote explicitly. Now, again, I understand the headache this must cause for Warner Brothers. There's, of course, a very strong argument that a multi-billion-dollar franchise that expands way beyond the films should remain all ages. And I'm sure some of you are right now typing, but Grace, why isn't LGBT material considered all ages? That's horrible. Well, here's the thing. LGBT discussion inherently involves sexuality, and it's very difficult to argue that sexuality should be part of any discussion that involves little kids, right? That little kids will be privy to. It's a decision that parents have to make themselves, one that can't be forced on parents. So again, I feel very bad for Warner Brothers. This is a difficult spot to be put in, but you know what? This is queerbaiting 101, unfortunately, what's developed here, and Hollywood needs to stop. Just like if LeFou is gay, he should be gay. And if Dumbledore is gay, he should also be gay. And JK Rowling had no business introducing this element in the first place if she knew she wasn't going to be able to go there in an effort to protect the business side of the empire she's built. She knew what she had, and she knew, she's a very smart businesswoman. She has to think things ahead when she plans out these elaborate stories. She must have been able to look down the road and see where this would take her. And if she's really the social crusader that she bills herself to be, a very rich one at that, mind you, well, then she can certainly afford to finish what she started of her own free will. There was no fan petition that said, make Dumbledore or a character in the world of Harry Potter gay. This came out of absolutely nowhere. It was something she very much wanted to do. I don't know what her motivation was. Maybe it was just to make a headline. But you can't just make this announcement and then let it sit there, right? Or stuff it back in the closet by not exploring it when you actually tell that story, right? I mean, she made a promise, basically. She can't back out of it. And if you're going to make Grindelwald versus Dumbledore, I mean, Grindelwald's name is even in the title of the second film, damn it. The most interesting aspect of your new storyline, you can't hide the most interesting part of that storyline, and that, of course, is the tortured, tragic romance between Grindelwald and Dumbledore. Now, speaking of Grindelwald, there was a strong indication in the first film, the first Fantastic Beasts, that he used flirtation to win over Credence. So Grindelwald is a queerbaiter, and so does this franchise really want to be the Grindelwald of the equation, right? And also look at the incredibly positive reception to Call Me By Your Name, which depicts a very complicated gay romance. I mean, I think it's time for LGBT relationships to be depicted like all other relationships, and that's messed up. When they were first introduced, it was, everything was very idyllic because everybody wanted to be positive, right? But I think now that we've gone past that very important stage, now I think we should go to the realistic stage. Now, sure, Call Me By Your Name has not made really any money at the box office. In fact, it's really, I think, a flop. But Reylo is messed up, right? The Joker and Harley Quinn's romance is messed up. There are tons of messed up romances in cinematic history, but those last two in particular are at the center of some very successful films that audiences have not only flocked to in droves, but have really gravitated towards those relationships. So just keep it PG-13. That's what we've learned there. Just explore this relationship between Grindelwald and Dumbledore, but keep it PG-13. So since JK Rowling has already brought us here and actually created a wonderfully angsty relationship between these two men, let's just do it. And if you don't know the details about this relationship, I've put a link down below in the video description to my detailed coverage. It's really just so good. It's a story that screams out to be told, not stuffed into the background and ignored. Because also, even with the obvious Grindelwald and Credence romantic undertones of the first film, it still made $814 million worldwide, so I think that's evidence that you can go further. Also, on the small screen, there are a ton of LGBT success stories these days, indicating that the audience not only not only is the LGBT audience there, but the mainstream audience is now interested in this and open to this storytelling as well. In fact, it seems that focusing these new stories on Newt Scamander and his pals was maybe done entirely so that Dumbledore and Grindelwald wouldn't be front and center, because Warner Brothers and JK Rowling didn't want to go here. And I think that decision is clearly holding the franchise back. As you can see, it's kind of gravitating towards those two anyway, because again, that's the most interesting part. Sorry, Newt Scamander, you're not that interesting. I think he's the least interesting part of the first movie, in fact. And I think, everybody's excited about Jude Law and Johnny Depp. Now, speaking of Johnny Depp, I think it's interesting that JK Rowling, who again has this reputation of being a social crusader, has now upset her progressive fans twice now. First, with her defense of Johnny Depp. That's also a very complicated situation, mind you. But now, what it looks to be queerbaiting. And I'm surprised that JK Rowling would allow this. It really does seem unfortunate. It is the kindest way that I can put it. So I'm curious, we've discussed the relationship between these two before, we've discussed this franchise, but I wanted to discuss this specific question down below. And from a creative and a business perspective, because it is difficult. How gay does Dumbledore need to be and Grindelwald need to be in this new series? How will you feel if when Jude Law and Johnny Depp are on screen, their past relationship is only alluded to? And some people might not even be aware of it if they don't know, about the relationship as it's been spoken about in the lore. So really, honestly, again, share your thoughts down below, and I think be respectful of both sides and the legitimate conundrum that exists here, because that's the only way I think that we're going to get to a reasonable suggestion on what we think this franchise should do. All right, so thank you so much for tuning in. Don't forget, below in the video description, there's a link to the description of this wonderful romance, tortured romance. And as always, you can check out some more videos, including that one, right now.